So now it's time to paint mountains on this wall. I need to establish the color of my mountains. So the question that I need to ask myself is, what color are my mountains? There's a lot of different kinds. But I'm thinking that these are going to be rocky. There's going to be a lot of rock in there because a mountain could be mostly covered with trees or it could be mostly rocks. I'm thinking that rocks will look cool in this, a more dramatic effect. And so I'm thinking like grayish, just like a grayish brown, like a dirty color. If you had a rock in your hand, compared it with a spectrum with red, orange, yellow, green on it, just what color is that rock? I'm thinking like a grayish brown. So to make that, this is how I decide my colors. But you, after all of this trouble, you can just get the color pre-mixed from the paint store. You don't have to worry about all this mixing process. But this is just how I come across the right color. There's a lot of thinking involved for me. So I'm going to establish a brown, a grayish brown. So right now I'm just mixing primaries. I mix all of my colors with the red, yellow, blue, and white. And right now I'm just trying to come up with the color of the rocks on this mountain. Make a brown just by mixing the red, yellow, and blue. I'll add some white. Get that color more muted. If you want to make brown more gray, you add blue. If you want to hear a lot more about the logic behind mixing colors like this, like I do, I tried to explain it in detail in my video, Color Theory and Paint, that I have posted on YouTube. This process is good for me because seeing the color helps me. I look at it and I think, is that the color of a rock? The kind of rock I want these mountains to be made of? Looks a little bit too bright and orange. I want it to be gray, and then I just kind of troubleshoot it after I get a color on the wall. So to take out that orange, I add blue. To take out the color green, I add red. And I'll just however long it takes to arrive at the color that I like. I don't even know what the color is. I just got to see it, and then I'll know. I've got this color. So let's say you're holding a rock. It says, this looks like a good color to me. That looks like a rock. But this is like 50 miles away. This is a big mountain. There's a lot of atmosphere in between. So the question to ask yourself with any object in the painting is, first, what color is it? And then, what if it's far away? Or how far away is it? So then, to get this distant look, all I need to do is add the color of the atmosphere. So I've got the color right here. Color I already mixed. And just adding this is how I'm going to come across my distant mountain color. Okay, I want to add a lot more to this, so I'm just going to do the blue and white just like I mixed the sky, because I want to add a lot more and I don't want to use up my sky color. But the blue and the white has the same effect as adding my sky color to it. So I'm looking at this against my blue backdrop, and I'm just imagining this being a mountain. Is this the color? And it's starting to look the way I want it to. To make this even more confusing, we have to ask, how is the light hitting this? Where is the light and the shadow going to be? I've already established with my clouds that I've got the light shining from overhead and a little bit to the right. So it's shining down on the right sides of things, but a lot on the top. So the right side of every part of this mountain is going to be lit a little more than the left side of every part. I need to establish my shadow color and my light color, just like I did with the clouds. To do that, the shadow color is going to be a little bit bluer because it's got all the light of this blue sky shining on it, but not the direct light of the sun. So let's make a little bit bluer part of this color. Right here. And we're not going to get, we want this to be nice and light because it's distant mountains. And then I think I'm going to go a little bit on the purple side, because a lot of times distant mountains, they kind of have a purple hue to them. And that happens when you have you know, kind of orange, red light from the sun mixing with the blue light. The combination of those make this purple tone on these mountains. So this will be my shadow color right here. And now let's establish a light color. The part of the mountains that are getting hit by the light. We're going to need more orange for that. So over here, we'll add more orange. Red and yellow. Then add white. Probably do more white still. Let's see how that looks. If I were to start making a mountain here, this would be the light side. There might be some rocks catching the light here. That might be the shadow. I'm looking, I'm visualizing. I'm thinking I need to go lighter on everything. So we'll do more of the sky color on this color. We'll do more sky color on the light color as well. Let's get some of this purple down here and throw that in the mix. Light, shadow. Light, shadow, light, shadow. What is the? I want this to be even bluer still. Bluer still. It doesn't look distant enough to me. It just doesn't look distant enough. I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to mixing color. I just sweat the small stuff a lot. I really get into like just getting that color exactly. I'm kind of a control freak with color. I'm like, no, it needs to be a little more like it's close isn't good for me when I'm mixing it. I'm just finding that exact hue. The right darkness, lightness, the value of it, the right hue where it, where the balance of the red, yellow, and blue and white is. Now that I have that established, I'm going to mix a batch of each of these colors. And you could either do the same thing and mix it yourself, or just go get the color pre-mixed and we'll give you a reference color with the number. You just get it from your local paint store. Okay, I got my color mixed and we're ready to paint some mountains. Let's do this. I've got my shadow color that I did with just black and white. After all that trouble with the primaries, black and white. That's what it looks like. You can see all these patchy little test spots I was doing while I was matching the color. That was all just tests, so I'm going to paint right over it. And I'm just going to start making my mountains. So as you're shaping your mountains, this is the shadow. I'm going to use the highlight color after. Near the base of a mountain is always not as steep of an incline. So this is not going to look very natural if you do a mountain that's like that. Right? Like the point and then it drops down all of a sudden at the base. And some can be shaped like that, but I'm trying to tell you the common pattern is less of an incline near the base. And so I'm going to just start putting rocks and cliffs coming up, and I think I want to go just right in front of this cloud. I'll start just by trying to get a shape going before I worry about the details of doing the highlights. And I'll keep applying water to try to keep it as wet as I can so that I can get some colors blended softly in there when I'm ready. Seems like when I use the back of the brush like this, I kind of get harder edges and I can kind of push it sideways. Use it however you want. You can try different things. That's how I learned so much of what I know, was just going out in the garage and just doing tests, just experiment, trial and error. So I'm kind of thinking like rocky pinnacles sticking up, going like this. And then maybe when it gets down in here, this will be greener from like trees or bushes or whatever's on this mountain. I'll put some green in it. I want it to be nice and dramatic. Maybe this one will come down. All right, so then let's start putting the highlights in. So everywhere that's facing, even the stuff facing just slightly to the right, we'll get the highlight color. So let's just start kind of going to the right edge of things, and I'm using that same color that I mixed. And I'll start just by doing these vertical stripes that just end on the right half of all these little points. Of course, you don't have to do this style of mountain. I mean, you can do whatever. You can just throw highlight colors in there. I think just having the right colors will do most of the work for you. But I just have decided that I think it'd be cool if these look like big tall pinnacles sticking up. And maybe I'll just kind of do little dots of detail across the top where the light is hitting it from above. If this was a foreground object, then it would not be nearly so gray. My highlight color would be a lot more intense, and my shadow color would be a lot darker. But this, I need to look real distant. And so when I put my foreground stuff on it, it'll really pop out. Just putting little highlights across the tops of these. Maybe some more of these kind of things. And then I can do the same thing where I did with my clouds, where I kind of blended it, where I dry out my brush. And if there's any areas that look heavy or unnatural, I want to just blend them a little more, I could just do a quick drag across to blend it. And then if I'm unhappy with that, I can come back with the shadow color. So you can mess with this as long as you want. You know, you spend hours on it just seeing what works, see what kind of looks you like. And do that, add more shadows in here. Let's do another mountain up here. Actually, I'm gonna make this one more in front. Okay, so this one will come down. We'll put highlight colors on there. This is gonna be the brighter side of the mountain here, so we'll put a lot of that highlight color on. Put some there. Mountains are a real huge object, so there's a big difference in altitude, in atmosphere from the base to the top of the mountain. So as you come down your mountain, it's a nice effect to add your sky color down near the base. It's handy having that saved in these containers for this exact reason. You know, you come back and use it in other places. See, so this adds some atmospheric haze in there. Now, the only problem is this can be kind of green because the blue of the sky, and there's kind of some yellow tint here. So instead of using the blue, if I've got any kind of yellows and oranges that I want to do like this atmospheric haze, I'll just use white instead of blue. So I'll just grab my white real quick, and that'll function the same way as if I was adding sky color to something. It'll just lighten it up and make it look like it's naturally disappearing into this haze at the bottom. You know, it makes it look distant and big when you add this foggy effect. My paint's getting a little bit sticky, starting to drag. But if that happens, there's always more paint. I'll just get more of this, bring it down. This is the shadow color. You can see already that my shadow color doesn't look like it matches here because this is wet and this is dry. You just have to get really used to seeing that, just knowing that it matches. Even though it doesn't look like it matches, you have to know that it's going to dry and it's going to look the same. Like this. Add my highlight color in here. And you know, maybe if you're feeling brave and you want to add a little bit more detail, maybe in the highlight color you just get a little dab of pure white and you do this, because the more you mix colors on your canvas, the more detailed your picture can appear. It causes thousands of different variations of shades in close proximity, and sometimes has a real nice natural effect to it when you see the fine variations of shades across the surface. Because if I just have one solid color, it's just a very artificial painted look. So seeing all these little tiny changes. Alright, so I'm thinking we're going to do another mountain back here. Now with this one, I'm going to put the same colors, but I'm going to lighten it. So I'll put my sky color, and like I said, if it ends up looking too green, I'll just use white instead. But we'll try using the sky color first. See how much I'm adding? A lot. And what that's going to do is make this mountain look like it's far away and huge. We'll just kind of set it just behind this one. I'll cut a line right here. Right where I see these rocks. Cut it in there. Just kind of, I can always redo these, and it won't have to be so exact. Get some water on my brush so that I keep a nice wet edge. Now right now it looks real light, but it's going to darken, and you'll see it as a darker silhouette on this blue sky. And I'll just make it come way up here. I mean, this is like touching the clouds. It was way up there in that upper layer. We'll make some sharp rocks at the very tip. I'll just fade it out like that. And because I added all that sky color to it, this mountain is just going to look far away and big. Get more of that sky color, and I'll do the same atmospheric effect. You know, you don't want this haze that you add to the bottom to follow the shape of the mountain. Don't do that. It looks dumb. You want it to be more level, like the horizon. Follows the horizon, not the shape of the mountains. Okay. I'll just fade that out. I'm going to add some of the highlight color in that one too. Same thing with the highlight color. Now the highlight color is not a highlight anymore, it's dark, so I got to add white because I lightened that shadow color so much. So this one I'm going to come in here and just start doing random texture in here. I'm using primarily this tip of the brush, that longest point of it. Not a lot of pressure, just using real wet paint. Just trying to go all different directions with it. Looking for the spots that have unmixed white and moving it around. Do some more of the same stuff. Some of the white. Just make the look of some rocks catching the sunlight. Okay. That one looks like it could use some too. This little point right here is kind of cool. Add some white to it. Painting a mural is so different than doing a little painting. You know, you're working with large amounts of paint, and you know, I just kind of keep them somewhere nearby, and I end up moving far and trying to work faster. It's just a larger project, so there's a lot more moving around involved. All right, we'll take a break from that guy, let it dry, see how we like the color. Then we'll come over in here, and I think I'll use more of this far away color and add it into this valley here to make some real distant mountains on the horizon. The same kind of things. And I use mostly the shadow color and the sky color. See, that's a lot of sky color. Let's go right up, break the edge of that cloud. It's context that causes a picture to make sense. Because these mountains look like they're hitting a layer of clouds, they look big. Because I put those clouds there. And because they have that faded, atmosphere color to them. I'll call that good. Then we'll get some of this and do more of this one. And actually, it might look kind of cool if I do more of a continuous fade to my closer color. Then it might make these mountains look more deep, give you a sense of it gradually going back to these distant ones. So I'll try that. I'll just put my shadow color in, but instead of making a peak in front of these, I'll just fade it in with a little bit of texture, just like I've been doing. So it's more of a gradual fade, and then maybe I'll start throwing in more subtle little rocks and peaks. Sometimes doing more of a gradient can make something seem deeper and more 3D. Then maybe carry more of it this way, make another peak coming up this way. We'll leave the edge of that cloud showing. Fade out that way. So maybe I want these mountains to look like they've got some distant forest and some green on them. So to do distant green, you're not going to do blue and yellow. You're not going to do green. I'm going to take black. It's good to always have pure black in your arsenal. And then, tiny bit of yellow. Yellow and black make a very muted green. Once I get my color, a good balance of black and yellow here, I'll add just a little bit of white to it. Just lighten that so that it's close in comparison with these other hues. And you see, then this is real distant. So this is at the base of these rocks. I'll just make like it's a forest just coming up and just kind of stopping where these rocks start. And you just use your best judgment, on how much of that to add in there. Then we'll add some of the rock color in here, bring it down. Just let it kind of blend. I find that it's better to try to work fast and don't really worry a lot about little details. Just get used to moving fast and not worrying about them. And then as you get more and more familiar, then you learn how to just kind of plug in little techniques as you go. Now I'm back to my highlight color, my rock. So just adding some of that in there. Add a little bit on this side. Couple lines going down. Then let's say we've got kind of this distant green up here in here. So let's say as it gets closer, it's going to get darker. So maybe we have a hill starting to form in here. Black and yellow. That's your mix for hills and distant trees. It's black and yellow. Get some water, make sure this is real usable. Now this brush probably can get a real sharp point on it, and that's real handy for doing little hills full of pines or some kind of trees, But maybe in here I want it to just fade up the mountain, so I'll just use that technique where I make it softer. that. Then we'll do more of that same thing up in here. Black. So you see how this color is getting less gray as I keep adding it to the current colors that are on there. You just got to be careful not to go too yellow. Too much yellow definitely looks way unnatural. It's the tiniest amount. It's better to end up too gray than to end up too yellow. Too gray will still look like a natural distant object. Make like a real steep little crest of a hill right here in the front, just to try to make it a little more interesting. Make it fade into that valley. You could go very simple on this. You don't have to get all complex like I'm doing and do all these different land structures. I mean, you could just do one layer of the green. It would just like a hill in front of the mountains, look perfectly natural. I just get all fancy schmancy because I can, you know, just 'cause it's fun. It's not getting the details real exact that makes a mural look good. You know, it's just getting the right colors in the right places. I always say it's not in the detail, it's how well you do the detail. Whether it's a little or a lot. If you do a little bit of detail really well, you'll have a nice picture. Now, I'm gonna put some snow on the mountains, just for the sake of showing you how to do it. I'm using the same white as I used for the white in the clouds. And I'm using this 1-inch brush. This is the light color, so I'm going to stay on the light side of the mountain. And the way I'm going to shape these areas of snow is kind of with this swooping little smile shape, okay? Because that represents snow settled into a valley and then kind of fingering up the edges but not sticking to the vertical edges of rocks like this. And if I stack those on top of each other, then it'll look like little trails going up the mountain. And then, you know, around the edge of the mountain, things are getting tighter because of perspective, so maybe I'll do more of it. Smaller shapes, tighter together. This is all distant stuff, so I'm not going to really sweat it a lot exactly, you know, where these little patches of white are. I'm just going to try to stay on the light sections, so not the dark sections, just the light ones. So I'll make maybe some little valleys going this way. Wherever I make any traveling, you know, this is like a path of a low spot where snow settled, but I'll make little edges fingering up and tapering off, like smile shapes, because that'll look like little valleys where the snow settled in. Coming down here. Make some up at the top. See, here's a little valley, so I'll put snow in there. I'll leave enough of the dark of the mountain so you can still see the shape of it. You know, just so that my shape of my mountain doesn't disappear in the snow. Make a little valley traveling up right between these. Like that. Make one in here. I could use a smaller detail brush for this if I wanted to. I could use this little 3/4 inch. And I could make little trails traveling up. I mean, if you want to drive yourself crazy with details, go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to do some shadow color. And guess what? I mixed it with the exact same colors that I mixed the cloud shadow with, just a little bit different proportions. This is red, blue, and white. And I mixed it so I want it to be just barely darker than the sky so you can still see the edge of this mountain, but I need it to be lighter than the rocks. So you're going to see this when it dries as a darker shadow against this sky color because it dries darker. And I'll do the same kind of shapes, just kind of swooping smile shapes. I'll do more on this side of the mountain than I did on the other side. Look at this. This is the cool side of the mountain, see, because the sun's not shining on it. So we're going to have more snow there. And maybe in little areas, I'll just put tiny bits of white, like a little rock or something that's sticking up, catching the light. Where it meets the white here, I'll do a soft blend in some areas so it looks like a smoother transition of it. Now watch how I'll take this shadow color and on the right edge of this valley, I'll put that blue shadow color so that it gives it dimension. Like, I think I got too much here. See, it'll give it dimension. But I have to be careful that I don't make it darker than the surrounding rocks. Like that right there is probably too dark, so I'll bring in my light color again and lighten it up. I always have to be conscious about what I need my colors to be lighter than and what I need them to be darker than. And white snow is not going to be darker than the rocks that it's laying on. So I have to be careful that the shadow color is never darker than the rocks of this mountain. Let's blend these little guys in. I can see that I mixed this color a little too dark because I'm seeing where it's drying, it's actually a little bit darker than the rock color. So all I'm going to do to fix that, for you I'll just post an appropriate color, but for this I'm going to add white to this. Because I need to make sure that this is light enough that it pops out on these rocks. As long as it has that blue shadow color to it, you know. Maybe I make a valley traveling down like this. Start with the blue and then I'll bring in the white. Bring in the white highlights, you know, leaving the edges darker so that it looks like it's dipping down. I do the same thing when I paint dirt. You'll see when we get to that part. I use very similar techniques. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing across the rest of this picture. Put some on these other mountains, like down in here, and find some other little highlights. Not a lot. I don't want this to look like it's the Arctic. You know, I want to make it look like a nice day to be outside. So I'm going to just stick to the tops of the mountains with the snow, just those high areas. As I get down to here, I might do some real obscure bits of it because this is where I don't want to draw a lot of attention to. All right, let's do some more across the picture. Okay, that's the mountains, snow and all. Next, let's do some green grassy hills coming in the foreground.